Hey, welcome to the Northeast Hunt and Film podcast. I'm your host, Jason Alex. Here you'll find hunting stories and strategies based mainly out of the Northeast, but will also include hunts from all around the country. If you can hunt it and you can film it, chances are we're going to talk about it on here. Enjoy. Welcome everybody. Another episode of Northeast Hunt and Film. This week I'm joined with Neil Pendleton. Neil's kind of a well-known big buck killer here around the Northeast area, New Hampshire, Maine. We talk about his Maine buck he tracked down, some mishaps along the way, a little bit about reading the track, aging the track, which is huge in tracking. If you don't know how far the deer is away, it's really hard to judge where you are behind it, and that's the ultimate goal, is to, when you're following a track, know when to slow down, when to speed up. It's a big mental game. Tracking's definitely not an easy thing to do. I think that's why there's so much interest in it, and it's so intriguing, and it's just something that's becoming more and more popular, which is good, because if you look at the younger demographic, the kids 6, 7, 8, 10 years old right now, not a lot of hunters, not a lot of kids interested in hunting. They're more interested in their phones and tablets and all that. So the more we can put it out there that there's interesting and fun ways to hunt, hopefully hunting will have a strong future. A lot of information in this podcast. We did not a two-part, but we did a well over 2-hour long podcast with some breaks in between, and I figured I'd just split it up. So it kind of comes to an abrupt end. You'll just have to stay tuned for the rest of the stuff I put out with Neil. I actually was with Neil today and filmed some interview stuff for the video that's going to come out. He shot that big buck in southern New Hampshire with his Woodman Arms Patriot. He called Tomato Juice, 222 pounds. And he got really good footage of that, so I'm going to piece that together and can look for that coming out on the Hunt Suburbia channel. If you guys don't know Hunt Suburbia or don't follow Pat Guyette, head on over social media, Hunt Suburbia on Instagram, Hunt Suburbia on YouTube, Pat Guyette on Facebook, and give the guy a follow. He's putting on this huge event this coming August called Hunt Stock, and it's going to be a real, if you love the outdoors and you love hunting, you definitely want to get to Hunt Stock. It's going to be quote unquote the Woodstock for hunting. I suspect there's going to be a lot less psychedelic drugs at Hunt Stock, but the name's kind of funny. Pat's from Vermont. I'm from Vermont, so he wants it to be kind of the Woodstock for deer hunting. Get over, give him a follow, check the video out. Should be coming out fairly soon. I'll have it done probably a few days after you listen to this podcast, and try to get it down to Pat, have him put it out. A little bit of news on my end. I ordered stickers because I did a little social media poll. Who would buy a sticker? They're 3x3 circle sticker with just the podcast logo, white background, black lettering. And I'm gonna charge $5 a piece, free shipping. And a bunch of people raised their hands, so I just started with the basic pack. It was like 26 of them or 27 of them or something. And I checked the tracking, and they are currently in Nashua. So I would think that they're getting delivered the day this podcast comes out, Monday the whatever it is, 16th. Whatever day you're listening to this, it's that date. I don't know. You can go right on my website. I'll have them up there. If you go and they're not on yet, it's because I'm at work and I don't have, literally, I want to make sure I have them in my possession before I list them to sell. So bear with me a couple days, but go to northeasthuntfilm.com and I will have them up there for sale. Again, it's $5 free shipping, and it's a completely legitimate like website. You just enter your credit card information. There's no like Venmo or Venmeo or whatever it's called, or PayPal or any of that. It's just I pay good money a month to have an official e-commerce website, because I don't want you to feel like you're getting dicked around. And it's just your standard, enter your credit card information, and just like you'd order off Amazon. In the future, there's going to be t-shirts, there's going to be hoodies, there's going to be a bunch of stuff. I'm going to be selling prints on there. I'm going to be selling, drone photos. I'm going to be selling a bunch of stuff. I need to make sure I'm doing it correctly, doing it legally. I speak legally with the drone stuff because you have to have a Part 107 aviation license to be able to sell drone videography or photography legally. It's completely ridiculous. I don't know why you have to be a borderline pilot to sell pictures of a swamp with a drone, but that's the deal. And, just like hunting, we got to abide by the rules to do it legally. So bear with me. That website's going to be badass someday, soon. It's going to be something else. By the time you listen to this next year, mark my words, January of 2023, that website's going to be, there's going to be a lot of stuff on there. So bear with me. It's in the works. I'm a one-man band, and trying to learn it all and just trying to do it correctly, not get any legal trouble, especially with the drone stuff, which is unfortunate because I got a lot of drone photos I'd love to sell you, but I just legally can't till I pass that course, which is it's on my to-do list. Anyway, I'll stop rambling on here and getting this podcast with Neil. Hope everyone's having a good new year so far and staying warm. Hopefully nobody has any freeze-ups. We'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for the support, everybody. All right, we're live. Neil Pendleton, what's going on, buddy?
Just hanging out. One more day left to go.
Yep. Happy New Year. I can't believe it's almost over.
It's been a long season.
I'm a little burnt out, to be honest, but so I was texting with Neil earlier. He's like, I said I'm going to come down. We're going to do some podcasts, at least one. He goes, so you're going to come down and hunt, or are you going to film? And I just plan on coming down and then heading home and hunt for myself. And I was like, you know what? I don't got any spots I'm real stoked about. I do want to film because I kind of didn't really get a lot of that this year. Like, screw it. I'm going to come down and film. So we got it worked out to where if we somehow stumble on like a 4-pointer or spike horn or something, we're gonna pull the old switcheroo, and I'm gonna blow him away with Neil's gun. Which that Trigicon looks nice too, by the way. I was just looking at it in the cabin, but
yeah, no,
that green dot must look.
Well, I tried
awesome.
I tried the red, the amber, and the green ended up. I mean, it stands out. The contrast in that's way better. So I switched all my main guns, like my shotgun, the muzzleloader, and the 2 rifles that I have. I switched them over to the Trigicon just to keep everything the same.
Yeah.
So the glass is good, but the Leopold glass is a little better.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, as far as just having that green dot in the middle for quick, target acquisition when something's on the run and you need to really get onto it, you can't beat it.
I'm curious too, dude. We should do this winter or whenever. We should do a video like, shot by shot comparison with mine with the Loophole scope on it, and we'll roll some tires or something and just like see how better or worse or whatever target acquisition is.
Well, that's one thing
That'd
I
be
know.
fun.
There's a few different factors with that because I always grew up shooting a Leopold VX2.
Yep.
And it has a certain field of view. So at one point I got a VX3, so a lot more expensive, a lot better quality glass. But I couldn't, when I was a running deer, I couldn't stay on it as good. And so what I noticed is the field of view makes a big difference. It's like
Yeah.
when you're trying to follow something that's moving, and that's where the Trigicon almost has the same field of view at lower powers as the Leopold VX2. So that's something that I was kind of looking at, comparing the numbers, but that makes a big difference.
The VX2 being a 2 to whatever power.
It's a 3x9x40.
Okay.
But it's the field of view is just like, I don't know how to describe it, but it's like the amount that you see. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I'm curious too, because the VX Freedom I have on mine, that field of view is like a 3x9, but it's only a 20 millimeter objective, but it's got a crazy amount of field of view. That's why we should do like a R&D, like, whatever. We'll roll some tires, we'll stand up some clay pigeons or whatever, and quick shoot them, and I'd be curious to see.
Oh yeah. No, I'd be down to do it. I mean, it's always cool just trying out different guns and seeing different scopes and doing a comparison and just shooting in general.
Making videos, and it's content anyway,
Yeah.
People will dig it. So, even though we haven't had really any snow, we got some ice, and that crusted over for a while, but Neil's been getting after it this week. I think he's running on fumes now, but...
Well, yeah, a little tired. I mean, this is now 4 days, and I did just over 12 miles the last 2 days, and then...
Each day.
Yeah, each day, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then Monday I got a late start. I ended up leaving first thing Monday because I'm staying at a cabin down here that I had rented the week before, because, of course, like most of the weeks this year, you think snow is coming. That's what the forecast shows, and then it changes to all rain.
Remember when you sent me that picture with the snow? I think you were walking up to the cabin or something. There's snow. That was like the other day.
Yeah, that was, I think, Tuesday night. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, yeah, too bad. It's not gonna amount to anything. No, it's gonna stick. And so I looked at the weather. I had no idea there was any snow coming at all. They're predicting 2 inches of snow where I am, out of nowhere. And I look at the radar, and there's this huge, there's a cloud the size of Massachusetts, snow just coming through the area. I was like, what? Look outside, there's snow directly overhead of us. The radar says. Not snowing. Like, huh.
How's that possible?
It's like dark blue. Like, it's not snowing. And it's still saying you're going to have 2 inches by like 4 a.m. or whatever it was. So I went to bed, high hopes, woke up, nothing. Some flakes. We got some flakes. So how does that work? It seems like the more the years go on, like the more they can't predict the weather. Have you noticed that?
I've definitely noticed that. Yeah,
they can't predict it day to day.
It's like fake news, right? It's just like the weather. It's like they try to predict a massive blizzard coming in just to get you to pay attention and keep checking back.
So there's a conspiracy against trackers, is what you're saying.
I'm beginning to think
it's gonna snow in the morning. Better take the day off, bro.
Yeah, because I mean, this season especially, it's
been bad.
It's been awful. I mean, I was planning on going up to Maine, and I was gonna take my vacation. I was planning on going the third kind of week of November, because the weeks were a little bit different this year. So it'd be kind of the third week, and I head up into Maine, and then I'm up there that Saturday. It's supposed to be a snowstorm coming through, and then all of a sudden, it's Monday morning, wake up, back to rain. I'm like, nope, head back to work. Not going to take my vacation week. Come up the next week, same thing. Beautiful forecast. Well, looks like snow's coming. Monday morning, rain.
Yeah.
Turn around, drive back to work. Then finally, Thanksgiving, I headed up after doing Thanksgiving dinner. Drove up. Friday, we got snow. So then Friday, Saturday, the last 2 days of rifle, it was pretty good conditions. And then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, there was decent conditions. Thursday, we got a bunch of freezing rain. And then Friday was like 30, 40 mile an hour wind gust. And then Saturday was like the worst conditions. It's like, the whole entire week. And said, well, I don't have high hopes, but I'm going to try to make something happen, and got it done.
Yeah, tell that story. What'd that buck weigh?
It was 211.
211, okay.
Yeah.
211 on
December 4th.
The last day of the muzzleloader season in the north.
Yeah, so in Maine
zone?
there's the 1 week muzzleloader season in the north zone.
Yeah.
And then you get 2 weeks the rest of the state. And so this was the last day of the northern zone.
December 4th to 11.
Yep.
So, for those of you who don't know, that's a giant buck.
Yeah, I mean,
Absolute giant.
I mean, this year I got one earlier in the season that was 222, and then my biggest, it was 237. And this deer was like the biggest body deer that I've gotten, just as far as overall length and just how tall he was too. It's like he had wicked long legs.
How was he, like, fat-wise?
There wasn't really much fat
He was
left
run
on
right
him.
down.
Oh yeah, run
Still
right down.
211.
Yeah. I mean, and then even
There's
that late in the season,
your 240, 250, folks.
he was a big buck early season. I mean, when I started following on his track, just seeing the stride and just the size of the track, I was like, yeah, whatever's at the end of this is getting shot. This is a big one.
I'm gonna try everything I got. Yeah.
Yeah, and then especially since I suspected it was the same one, it's like that I tracked to a bed on Monday and got a shot off at it and hit a branch 10 feet before the bed.
I gotta say, I did laugh a little at the one video where the branch is just swinging back and forth.
By like a little teeny...
Yep.
Yeah,
like,
it's just barely hanging
I've been
on.
there.
Yeah, because I went to a new spot that I had never been before and drove up in on these log roads and get to the top. And so at that point, I had gone quite a ways. I'd crossed a brook, gone up in, and then finally I was seeing a bunch of different buck tracks and doe tracks, and then I finally found this big track going along the side of the mountain, and it was coming through. It's like kind of all this whip type stuff, raspberry bushes and beech whips. And it started nibbling on some raspberry tops, and then some of the tops, some other stuff. And I said, well, it's probably gonna bed down, and started to head it up. And as it heads up, there's a couple little knobs that you can see as it goes up. And I said, well, at any point now, it's gonna bed down. There's no way I'm gonna sneak up on it. There's no wind at all. Even then, it's like there was still good snow conditions on that Monday, but it was just still like there's no way I'm gonna sneak up on it. It's gonna be looking downhill. It's pretty steep going up. And I just kept moseying on up, and after 2 or 3 of those little kind of like knobs, I was like, well, it's got to bed down soon. And the track went through a real tight spot, which is something that they obviously do. It's like right before they bed down. It's like so they can look back down on their track, and anything that was following them, they got to get through that tight stuff, and they're probably going to snap a branch and make some noise. So as soon as I saw that, I said, I'm not going through there. I'm going to peel out around it. So I swung around to the right and pop out the other side, and I look up, and there he is laying in his bed looking back down at me, probably 50, 60 yards away. And so at that point, I pull up on him immediately, but he doesn't seem like the way he's posturing, like he's really too alarmed. He's looking right down at me. But at that point, I said, well, there's a bunch of whips, like where he's laying, that are sticking up, in the...
Of course there is.
Oh yeah, so it's like I pull up and I got him in the scope, and I'm trying to I can't really feed those crosshairs through there successfully probably. So I'm like, if I take a couple steps, there's a branch that's laid across between 2 trees, and I can pin up on that and rest the gun on it, and then really try to get the crosshairs settled in. I said, well, I'll keep it right on him as I take those steps and see if I can make it there. And sure enough, he just stays relaxed and take the couple of steps and lean the gun on the branch. At that point, turn it to 9 power. Yeah, he's still laying right there. And I just set all the crosshairs right where they need to be, and he pops up on his feet. At that point, well, I couldn't really find, a lane to get the crosshairs in there. It was just pull right up, get him in the scope. He filled the whole scope, put it at the base of his neck, top of the shoulder, and just touched it off. And I knew I should have hit him. And then he took off, and within one jump, he was behind this little knob. So at that point, I'm confident, that I hit him. There's a doubt in the back of my head that I might have hit a branch because it was pretty thick getting through there.
Right.
But I pulled out my phone, made a video, retold the whole story. It's like of the morning. And I probably wait half an hour before I even, walk up to the bed. And I put the GoPro on, and I'm expecting to come up there and see blood all over the place and see him dead and, just a couple of jumps from the bed. I get up there, and there's a few different sets of tracks. And I follow on his tracks, and no blood. It was cold that morning, so all the snow was powder. So it would have been hard to, really see, unless it was a lot of blood. If it was just a couple specks, it would have just, clumped right up. So at that point, I followed him for a ways, and I just said, wait a minute, what's going on? There's no way that I missed. I'm like, unless I hit a branch. So I went back down to the bed and I started looking around, for blood on the impact site or hair. And I found a couple of hairs in the bed, but I'm thinking that just could be from him laying down there. And that bed, it just smelt of that musky buck smell. I mean, it just reeked. So then I looped back around down to where I shot and I look up the line of sight and I said, okay, let me walk that straight line up to the bed. And I walk up it, and 10 feet before it's like where the bed is, that's when I see, the picture that you referred to or the video there of that little teeny branch just barely hanging on by a thread.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the other tracks, those were older tracks, or was he with some does or something? Or
it was him. He had been using that bed.
Okay.
Yeah. So he had come in and out of it a couple different times. And so then, I could go through the whole week, but the quick version of that week is next day I went back up because I followed on his track the rest of the day, never caught up with him. Then the next day I went back up and I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss something. I didn't follow the wrong set of tracks, which I was confident, that I didn't, but I just said, hey, for my own peace of mind, I got to go back and do a circle around the area. And so then after, I said, okay, yep, nothing else was there. I headed off along the side of the mountain. I got probably, 3/4 of a mile away, and I came up on a spike horn that he got up, and he was a gimpy spike horn. He was only going on 3 legs. And at that point, I really had to make a hard decision. I was like, I still feel it's like, it's like, do you shoot that spike horn or not? It's like, he has one bum leg. I know they can go on 3
coyotes
legs
are going to get him.
but yeah, that's what's going through my head. And so I struggled with it for a little bit because I had time to think about it too. And then, it's like I took a couple steps and he ran off, and he was able to run off decently, but, still, you could just tell he was, wounded pretty good. So I decided, it's like 4.5 days of hunting left. No, it's like, that's not what I came up to Maine to do. It's like I wanted to get a good one. I didn't want to, use my tag on the spike horn. So I let that one go. Wednesday, I ended up tracking a decent buck, had him in the scope a couple times. Wasn't a huge rack, wasn't a small rack. I'd say probably 160, 180 pound buck. Only about 5 or 10 minutes into a track in the morning. So I said, it's too early in the day to kill one of those mediocre bucks. So then Thursday, I hunted in a different area. Friday, hunted in a different area. Friday, was miserable. It's like, didn't even cut a track all day long. Rode around for half the day, which is something I normally don't do. Normally I try to get in the woods and walk and see if I can cut a track. But I said, 40 mile an hour winds that day for the gusts. I said, let me see if in the truck I can find something, moving.
Right.
Then comes down to the last day. And I said, okay, well, if I could have shot deer Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, let's go back to that same exact spot. So I parked the truck, walked up in, headed up, that mountain. And I said, well, let me peel over towards where that buck was bedded on Monday. Sure enough, I cut a track that walked within probably 20 feet probably of that bed. And it was a good sized track. It wasn't the same track as the one that I had gone and missed on Monday. And then I get probably, 1/4 of a mile away from where the bed was. And then I cut a real good track going back towards the bed. And I think it was the same track of the one that I ended up getting and the one that I missed on Monday. I'm following that along the side of the mountain, so it goes just above the bed. It goes all the way across, and there's a log road that comes in probably another mile down across the side of the mountain. And where that log road comes in, he's angling like he's going to go across the end of the log road. But of course, like big bucks do, he doesn't go across the road. He peels around the end of it. When he loops around the end of the road, there was a fresh track that was going up on top of the mountain. Same exact size track, same exact stride, and that one was smoking fresh. The other track that was going down, I could tell it was made, sometime overnight, because there was like those beech leaves that had rolled into the track.
Yep.
So, you go 100 feet and you see a beech leaf in the track. This ain't fresh. I got to really cover some ground to, catch up on it. Here's a fresh one going up on the mountain. So I follow that track up to the top of the mountain, and I get just before it's like where like the kind of base of the top starts, where you're going up into the thick stuff up on top. And I'm looking, and all of a sudden I'm like, wait a minute, those pads look real small. And all I had been following at this point, because it was so cold that morning, was just crunch marks in the snow.
Yeah.
You couldn't even see pads. You couldn't even see dew claws, nothing.
Just dimples.
Just a big dimple. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
like a softball-sized crunch mark with a big stride. So at that point, when I see these little teeny pads stepping in the track, I start playing mind games. Last day, like, wait a minute. Like, you got to make a decision here. It's like, are you going to keep going up to the top where it gets thick? Or that track I was following down below, it's now been a half a mile at the end of that log road. That was a good one. That was one I would definitely shoot whatever's at the end of it. And you could see the pads, see the dew claws. And I said, well, if I keep going on it, I'm eventually, by the end of the day, probably going to catch up to it because it's probably going to bed at some point. So at that point, I hump it back down off the mountain, go back to the end of the log road, get back on that track, follow that one around for, I'd say, probably about a half an hour. And it came into a doe and followed that doe around for quite a ways. And I mean, throughout the whole night, you can kind of see, that they messed around down below that log road. And then, of course, I'm saying, wait a minute. That track that went up to the mountain, I know it was following a big buck. The little pads doesn't make any sense. Why'd you peel off it? Well, because it's the last day, you're second guessing yourself, and you need to make something happen. So back up the mountain I go. I just peel off that older track and said, no, it just didn't add up. So I hoof it back up there, go the half mile back up. At this point, I'm drenched in sweat. Get up there, and I go 10 more feet. Yeah, there was a doe that came in from the side that didn't see her track. She came in from the side, and she stepped in his track. And I'm like, all right, now I see what's going on because the track split.
Yep.
And they start going up to the top. I was like, you dummy. I was like, we just wasted a bunch of
They
time.
do that. They walk in each other's tracks all the time.
Oh, they do it all the time. But, of course, as I said, it's like when you're playing these mind games, you need to make something happen.
Yeah, and you didn't see it come in.
I never saw
it. So you're
it.
like, why does Littlefoot have such little feet,
Yeah, I mean, the pads were just these little dainty things and this giant, like crunch mark. So at that point, luckily, I had actually made that, like that half an hour kind of screw up. It's like delay because, it's like when people talk about, it's like at some point when you're following a track, the point of when you meet what is at the end of that track, it has to be in the right spot, right?
Yeah.
And so,
absolutely.
So because of that delay, it ended up working out in the end. If I had just gone on it and not peeled back down off, I would have hit it at the wrong spot. Mm-hmm. So at this point, I start up, to go to the very top. And right before we get to all that softwoods, just thick stuff at the top, the buck started chasing the doe around for a little bit. You can see some running tracks. And at this point, I left it for a while, and it's, only this, 100 yards in front of where I left it. So the running isn't from me. He's just chasing this doe around. So then they go right up and they go into, what I'll call rabbit jail. It's the spot you'd have to crawl through it, but they know the way through it. And so they kind of go up to the top and you hit some rock ledge, and then they start cruising across that top and they start making their way back down off. At this point, it's almost right above where that buck bed was. So I've gone across the side of the mountain. I went up to the top, off the top, down below a little bit, back up the top, and now I've come across the top and I'm dropping back down kind of to where I started on that track. And at this point it comes into where there was other deer tracks and a feeding, and I came down in and there was like little shelves that came down off the mountain, and when it came into like all these bushes, you could see there was a bunch of feeding going on. So it would be like a cluster of like a 50-yard circle of just tracks everywhere. So I came down into it and I'd circle around and try to figure out where they came out of it, go down the next shelf. Okay, yep, bunch of other tracks. Go down to the third shelf, bunch of tracks in a cluster. Where's that big buck track? There's other tracks that come out of it, but his track doesn't come out of it. Something doesn't add up. Peel back up to the top. Sure enough, see a big buck track scoot out the side. All right, he's going that way with the doe still. So luckily I didn't waste too much time. It was like 5 minutes. I was able to sort it out. And then they cruise along the top and they drop back down off the top. And they get just off the top again. And the buck, he's right with the doe. And then he peels off and goes back up towards just like he's going to go back up to the top. And he walks up on this rock. And he stood on this rock. So there's one of two things that I'm thinking happened. Either at that point he just kind of like, for whatever reason, went up on this rock and the doe went by him maybe because he was, waiting for her to catch up. And he just said, hey, let me just stand up here. or what I think might have happened is he might have heard me up top or heard something up top. And so he pulled himself back like as close as he could to the mountain. So I couldn't see what he was. It's like he wouldn't be out in front. So he almost tucked himself back in up on that rock. But then what was weird is when he came off the rock, like he had a few jumps. It was almost like he was trying to catch up to the doe. I don't think it was me spooking him. It was just seemed kind of like a playful, like, hey, let me catch back up to her. And so I'm watching this all unfold, and I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. It's like to, see what happened. We got fireworks outside.
They're lighting them up here.
Yeah. This is what, the third time I think we've heard fireworks tonight?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not even, well, we're getting to New Year's Eve.
They're pre-gaming.
Yeah.
Yep. So at that point, I end up following the tracks, and so it's still the buck and the doe together. The doe, she ends up going straight, and he finally peels off to the left. And I said, all right, he's left her. Now it's just one deer instead of two sets of eyeballs. And when she starts going straight, she's headed down through open hardwoods. You can see way down through. His track peels off to the left. So I start turning on his, and I go probably 30, 40 yards. All of a sudden, I start hearing blowing and blowing and blowing that just doesn't stop. And she's running down the mountain. I mean, probably back down where I parked my truck. It sounds like she's a half a mile away at this point. And she's still blowing. I mean, she must have blown 15, 20 times. She's way, way down the mountain. And I'm like, well, that's not good. You got a running doe blowing and blowing and blowing. This buck's probably alert. So with the open hardwoods, I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to keep going on him. And in any second now, he's going to be 200-300 yards out in front. I'm going to see a flash of brown, maybe see a rack, and maybe, get a Hail Mary shot, because I know it's, giant track. I know what I'm following. And I'm thinking, well, this is probably isn't going to end well. So, but I'm also thinking I got all day because, I mean, it's probably 11 o'clock at this point, roughly, probably 11:15. So I go a little bit further on that track, and I'm thinking, well, if he's alert because that doe blew, I got to do something to try to seem like there's other deer in the equation. So cover up one nostril, and I do the whole wicked loud snot rocket to sound like a deer blowing, make like a blowing sound through my nose. Grab my grunt tube, bap, bap. Grab the can call, map, map. Take a couple steps, crunch, crunch, crunch. Grab the grunt tube, bap, bap. Yep. Grab the can call, a couple more times, crunch, crunch, crunch. Take a couple steps. And then I just stop and wait. And I'm looking down out in front, and I'm thinking, he's got to be down there because she was only 100 yards in front of me. I mean, they just came off the top together. I'm looking down, and I'm like, all right, he's just got to be in one of those clumps of trees somewhere in these open hardwoods. And I'm looking, and I'm like, well, his track angle's off to the left a little bit. So I look over, and there's like on the side of the mountain, there's like a little like a trickle that comes out, probably like a spring that comes out of the side of the mountain. And there's that little kind of spring trickle that comes out, like a little brook that starts. And there's like a pretty good piece of rock ledge that sticks out from it. And I'm thinking, well, he's not going to go over that direction. He's going to wrap around it. So I'm like, I'm looking down out in front, down through those hardwoods, take a few more steps. And I look back to my left. There he is. He's standing probably, I don't know, 100 and... I looked at it on Onyx and tried to figure it out. I think it was 130 yards is what he was away from me. So I look over, and he's facing away. And he's at the top of that little spring trickle. And it looks like he must be eating ferns or something because he's facing away from me. And I'm thinking, how is he facing away from me? It's like he has no idea that I'm here after that doe just took off blowing. So I pull up, and I got him in the scope, and he's facing away. And 130 yards offhand, I'm thinking, well, do I take the shot, right now? It's like the crosshairs. I need to really steady him. And I'm like, well, you hit a branch, on Monday, and there's whips in the way, and that's in the back of my head. And I'm like, well, if I take 2 steps, there's a tree that I can pin up against, and he doesn't seem like he has any idea that I'm here. He's facing away. Well, all right, let me see if I can make these 2 steps. So I turn the scope up to 9 power. I take 1 step, and he looks over his left-hand shoulder. He spins around. Okay, now he's looking at me. Well, I got to take the shot. I got to make this happen. I pull up. And I said, well, I can put it on his neck. I can put it right in his hindquarters, or I can put it just in front of his hindquarters and try to break his back. I said, well, that neck shot, the way he's facing away, no, put it right in front of his hindquarters. Boom! I touch it off. His ass end just drops right out from underneath him. And at that point, I knew I'd spined him. And he tried going, because there's like a little ravine that goes out of the spring trickle is. And so he takes off to try to go, but his whole ass end is just on the ground dragging. And he topples down the ravine. He flips over and does cartwheels and backflips. He catches himself. He pulls himself and goes for a little bit. And he goes behind this little knob. Well, at that point, mission accomplished. I knew that I had him. Like, I knew he wasn't getting away, but I knew I was going to have to finish him off. So I actually had a GoPro in my pack. So I put the GoPro, I have a shoulder mount thing. I put that on. And so I end up, scooting around that little knob, and I come up, and then I end up getting the finishing shot in him. And, just the will of those things to live. It was just unreal.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so I shot him in front of the hindquarters, just to the right of the spine, broke his back, topples down, 60, 70 yards, bouncing off rocks, coming down this ravine. Then I put that neck shot just behind his front shoulder. It actually went through just above his heart. Took out his veins and arteries, hit lungs. Then he still pulls himself another, 10, 15 feet. And just, it's an impressive thing to see. It's like, obviously, it's, bittersweet to see too. And then he just picked his head up as high as he could. He held it up and then just slowly laid his head and neck down. And just, for just a giant buck like that, it's just, at that point, it had been a week of hard hunting. It's like after, getting married in August, it's like, all the hard work that goes into a whole season. It's like, wanting, it's like a whole life changing, thing. And it was at that point, being alone all week long. It's like I hadn't, really had another person that, come up to visit, for, I think since Sunday. It's like, so it's been almost a whole week. And at that point, it was pretty awesome. It's like just to know, look back and see the scenery of the mountains and just let out a big, it's like, kind of yell and
sit down next to an old mountain warrior, Yeah.
So
that's super cool.
That was, it was awesome. And plus too, it's like another part of it was, I do a lot of stand hunting. And so tracking is one of those things that 3 years ago, I really kind of said, hey, I want to do this and get good at it and really, be successful. And so I, tracked a couple of bucks, especially in 2019. I tracked one in Maine, and then I tracked another one in Central Mass. So it's like I knew I could do it, but then, to solidify it again and,
right.
The last day, it's like it was just, it really kind of hit me. It's like, hey, it's like, prove to almost myself that, hey, it's like, you got this in bad conditions. You still got it done. And so it was just an awesome experience.
Was that your first Maine buck tracking?
No. I've tracked a handful of bucks in Maine.
Okay.
But it was really, some of them growing up when I was tracking, it was one of those that it was, I guess, because when you follow guys, it's like Hal Blood, the Benoits, and you really learn about tracking, how to do it. There's following a track and kind of getting lucky.
Right.
And there's doing it and reading what the track's doing.
Through skill and
through skill. It's like, and that's something that a few years ago I said, look, like this is what I want to do and I want to get good at and I want to learn as much as I can about it. And part of it is you can have all the knowledge, but you have to gain experience.
Yeah.
So that's when, really it was, starting in 2019 was probably the first year that I said, I'm really going to go and do this and commit to, tracking. And, cause even when I, at my dad's camp, we'd sit in stands a lot of times because in the area of Maine that it is, we don't get a lot of snow.
Yeah.
And so that's when I started using my vacation for the week of muzzleloader because that's a better chance of snow in that area. So I hadn't gotten a lot of opportunities to do tracking. So then to finally have now, a few years of really doing it and, to get it done again, it was awesome.
Yeah. It's like Kevin Harrison, Big Woods Bucks team member, said, he's like, there's following deer tracks and then there's tracking. And it's completely different. Like when you're like, okay, you're reading what the deer's doing, aging tracks, all that stuff. You can find deer tracks and follow them, You don't know how old they are, how many, depends on when it snowed or whatever, but like actually tracking them and, you know, learning what they're doing and predicting what they're about to do as far as like the feeding and bedding thing.
Well, yeah, feeding, bedding, but then I mean, a lot of it's even the snow conditions. I mean,
Yeah.
Because it's like, if I mean, a track, it's like, I mean, obviously, listening to podcast is something that I've, done a lot of. It's just, there's so much knowledge that's in podcast.
Yeah.
So, listening to Hal talk about, he says a track's always changing. If it's
From the moment it's made.
Yeah, from the moment it's made, it's changing. Because if it's, if it's above freezing, it's melting. If it's below freezing, it's, it's hardening up. And so it's freezing. So the track, once you learn how it changes, you can really gauge it's like how close you are, how far you are away from that deer. And so that's something that, in 2019 and 2020, to really be looking for all those things and then to get enough experience doing it. Like I really felt like going into this year, I have all the knowledge, I have all the tools. Now I just got to get the right conditions, which I had for most of the week. And, I tracked that buck on Monday to his bed. It's like on Wednesday, it's like I tracked that other buck. And I knew that one that I tracked on Wednesday when it was in a softwoods, where when you're in those softwoods, it's like those spruce groves. And it's just those skidder roads that are just, that's the only thing you have really is those
you
skidder
can't
road
walk through
swaths.
you can't walk off of the skidder roads. It's just like a wall.
Yeah, that's all it is. And so you just have these, it's this maze of just skidder roads that go in. And I knew when I stepped in to one skidder road and his track turned to the right and it looked like it was going to be a long straightaway in these softwoods on that skidder road, I was like, he's going to be standing right there. And I stepped out into it and I was like, wait a minute, where is he? Like, he's got to be right here. I could just tell the track was that fresh. It's like by reading those little snow conditions that's hard to describe. I'm like, I should be seeing him right now. I took 2 steps and he just stepped out of it on the left-hand side. But once you can really start to figure that stuff out, you can know, how close you are and when to go slow and when to pick it up. I mean, that's a big part is, really just covering ground. I mean, because you're just wasting time if you're not catching up to it.
Yeah. Do you feel the track a lot, like with your bare hands? Like stick your fingers down and feel the pads?
A little bit, but I mean that's something that I haven't really gotten used to by feel. It's just by sight for the most part. I'll feel it, and I haven't figured that out yet to kind of tell. It's like how old it is and how fresh it is by feeling it, but by sight, I feel like I got a pretty good handle on it.
Yeah, where it breaks the snow and.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different stuff. It's like whether it's breaking the snow, it's like how it pushed the snow. It's like up on top of the other snow. You get those little crumples.
Yeah.
That'll be there.
Yeah, I'll take my foot and I'll kick snow up next to it and just compare the two. How does the snow? Because that doesn't matter. Obviously, my foot's cold, their foot's warm, so that part is going to be different. But as far as kicking the snow up, our feet's going to do the same thing.
Yeah.
So you just get down and compare the two. Like, okay, mine's the balls I kicked up are like really defined, and these are more rounded off. Like maybe he's a little further away than I think. That's kind of how I go.
Yeah, and there's so many different things. I mean, it's really just you got to get the experience doing it, and that's where what brings us to where we're sitting now. It's like being in Massachusetts and trying to chase snow around in the late season opportunity that's out here. It's just. For me, it was a time the last, couple of years to be coming out here and just to gain experience, to just follow deer around in the snow. I think that's what, in, many ways, it's like has been that leap forward. It's like, just by getting a lot of more opportunities to do it.
There's no more fun way to hunt.
No, I mean, it's different. I mean, I've had a lot of success stand hunting, and there's scouting that's involved, there's strategy, there's planning. But you're not actively bringing it to the animal that you're hunting.
Yeah.
It's you're just passively sitting back. And it's like there's luck involved in both things, right?
Oh yeah.
So but there's more luck involved in that particular day for things to go right, for a deer to walk by you that's out of your control. But you're in the driver's seat when you're following a buck track. There's still things that they can do. It's like, but it's that predator prey thing. You're following, you're going after it.
You're hunting it.
Yeah, actively.
Actively hunting it.
Yep.
And it's kind of like it kind of brings you back to like you said, more of like a predator feeling where you are actively being a predator. You're not just like, I hope he comes by my saddle today.
Yeah.
Hope he hits that scrape.
Yeah.
But when there's no snow, what do you do, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that's what, I mean, even as we talked about, the weather this year it's been crap.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I knew it's like, this being the last week.
You know where it's been really good, though? New York. I got to start looking in New York more. They get that lake effect stuff.
Yeah. So
I watched the Just Hunt Club video the other day, and they were in like 6 inches of good stuff.
Yeah.
We didn't get that
and
anywhere.
You can hunt Sundays.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maine and Mass, get your shit together. You can't. But
I mean, that's a big part of it, though, is that if you have a goal, for a season, if you want to do tracking, you got to really look at all the different opportunities that are out there, and you have to say, hey, I need to give myself as many opportunities as possible. So you can't just say, hey, I'm going to go to Maine and try to cut a track.
Right.
I'm just going to go to,
or financially that allows you.
Yeah. I mean, you got to be, willing to travel, in my opinion. It's like you got to, go where there's snow, and that's going to change, every year. I mean, obviously, if you get a chance to, change your vacation and be flexible there, when you're going to take days off. If you're only going to hunt weekends, well, driving all the way up, to Maine, it's like, or coming down to Massachusetts. I mean, that's tough.
Right.
But if you get a chance, because Vermont, you can hunt Sundays, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like you can go to Vermont, New Hampshire, New York. And then nowadays, too, you can look up forecast for snow depth, and whether it's using webcams or, I mean, even before I came out here on this trip, I was calling around to different stores. I would just, look up different towns, pull up Google Maps and say, hey, there's a store there. Call. Well, can you look outside for me, please? It's like, what do you have for snow?
That's something Scotty Lego would do. Hey, what do you guys got for snow? You see any turkeys?
Well, that's like, I forget who it was, but last week, I'd planned on being out here on vacation last week, and I'd come out with my wife, and we got here Friday, and I hunted on Saturday, and was supposed to get, originally they said 7 inches of snow, and then it changed to 4, then it changed to 2 to 4, and then it
changed to a scuzzin' of ice.
Well, yeah, and then it spit snow, then it turned to an ice storm. I mean, everything out here was covered in ice. And so at that point, I had gone and left and came back I went back home on Sunday, and there was a guy that he made a comment on my post on Facebook, saying that he had driven out here on Monday. He's like, oh, I wish I would have seen this because I didn't post it till Monday midday or Monday afternoon, and he had just driven all the way down here or out here, and he's like, crap. He's like, I wish I would have known it was all ice, that there really wasn't any snow, because he was coming from, I don't know if it was, New Hampshire or Vermont. It's like, I think it might have been Vermont, and up there it was all snow. Yeah. So he was thinking, well, hey, you come down here.
But they closed on the 13th.
Yep. So I'd said, well, hey, if you call around, to stores, that's the best way before you make a drive somewhere and, head out 2, 3, 4 hours, call ahead.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
They're probably like, what the hell? But whatever, you get your information.
I mean, sometimes they're kind of like, what the heck is that? But there was one place that I called, and the only thing that I could find in one of the areas that I was thinking about going was there was some farm or something listed, and I'm like, I don't know who I'm going to get. If you're calling a convenience store, it's one thing, but if you're calling a just a random business listed on on Google, I had a half an hour conversation with a guy. It was great. Like at the end of it, he's like, it was great meeting you. We never met. But,
yeah, great talking to you.
But we had an interaction talking about all kinds of different stuff, and yeah.
Good old farmer.
Yep.
All right, we're going to take 5 here because my battery's down on 1 bar, and I could just die at any moment. So we'll switch those out, and then, I don't know, maybe talk some scouting type
Sounds
stuff.
Good.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode. Make sure and come back and join us every other Monday with a brand new episode. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple, make sure and leave a review. And you can find me on YouTube at Northeast Hunt and Film. Once again, thanks for listening.